Okay. And welcome to the Municipality of Thames Center regular meeting, March 28th, 2022 at 5 p.m. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 5:03. Are there any additions to the agenda?
There are no additions.
Thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Do we have a disclosure of pecuniary interest, anyone?
Yeah, can you see me, Mayor Work?
I can hear you. I can't see you yet. I'm sure you'll be on the screen in a second, but I can hear you. There you are.
There we are. Okay.
All right. So which one are you in conflict with?
5.2 letter from the Integrity Commissioner, March 14, 2022.
Okay, thank you. All right. And
just sorry, the reason being is I'm the subject of that report.
Okay, very good. And anybody else? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to announcements. Are there any announcements? Hearing and seeing none, I'll move on to 5.1, which, Chris, this is your statement.
Mayor Work, can you hear me or?
I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. So I'd like to thank you, Mayor Work. I wish to make a formal apology to the Council of the Municipality of Thames Center for not understanding the process and asking more questions regarding a matter involving disposable of municipal lands that was discussed more than once in 2020. At the time, I believed by participating that I was doing what was in the best interest of the residents of Thames Center. I apologize now for participating in this matter and voting when I should have recused myself due to an interest connected with my private business operation that I was not aware at the time that I had. Going forward, I will be more mindful and diligent of any conflicts and will seek out advice from the Integrity Commissioner before participating. Given the costs incurred by the municipality for this investigation, I am voluntarily foregoing my council pay for the last 8 months of this term to help defray costs. Again, please accept my sincerest apologies.
Great, and thank you. Now moving on to 5.2, which is your disclosure, Councillor Patterson, and that would be the letter from the Integrity Commissioner. Okay, so that was an attachment, and there is a recommendation that the apology from Councillor Patterson be accepted and that the letter dated March 14th, 2022 from the Integrity Commissioner, Mark McDonald, Independent Resolutions Incorporated, be received as information. Can I have a mover for this, please? Councillor Heeman, seconded by Councillor Hunter. All in favor? So carried. And now moving on to a public meeting. So that council meeting adjourn its regular meeting and reconvene as a public meeting under the Planning Act. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Hunter, seconded by Councillor Heeman. All in favor? So moved. So our first public meeting is zoning application Z322, and did that. So to assist with the public meeting process, there's a 5-minute limit for all public comments, questions, or concerns. We encourage you to only participate in speaking if you have new additional information not already addressed. All written notices of the decision will be forwarded to designated parties, and that there's a 20-day appeal period from the date of decision. You may request to be notified of the decisions by emailing the clerk. So now we have the purpose of this public meeting is to consider a zoning bylaw amendment as submitted by the applicant, which is 274353 Ontario Incorporated. The agent being Zelinka Priamo Limited, care of Caitlin Crowley. And the property location is 16364 Thorndale Road. So I'm going to ask our planning director to provide an overview of the application and planning recommendation. Over to you, Mr. Bancroft.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this application before us is a rezoning application, and its purpose is to rezone the subject property from the agricultural zone to a site-specific agricultural zone to permit a second dwelling unit within an accessory building, which is otherwise not permitted under the current zoning regulations. And just for background for council's consideration, the subject lands, it is a 45-acre parcel, and it's located on the north side of Thorndale Road and just east of Prospect Hill Road. It is used primarily for farming purposes for field crop production, and the property contains a barn and an accessory building in the form of a detached garage, which is occupied by a dwelling unit. These lands are also privately serviced with a well and a septic system. And these lands are designated under the official plan as agricultural, protection area, and environmental. And they're also zoned agricultural and environmental protection. The applicant is proposing to construct a 7,000 square foot single detached dwelling on the property. And they are seeking to rezone to have the current dwelling unit within the accessory building recognized as a second dwelling unit. The current zoning limits the number of dwellings to 1 per lot, and therefore this request is being sought as an exception. The single detached dwelling to be constructed would be in proximity to the existing buildings and structures on the parcel, and it would be at least 50 meters away from any neighboring woodlot. The second dwelling unit, it has a floor area of 1,775 square feet, which would be 25%, just over 25% of the gross floor area of the proposed single detached dwelling. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, and the provincial policy statement provides policy direction, as does the County of Middlesex official plan, to encourage an appropriate range and mix of housing types, including second units to meet long-term needs of the community. And likewise, our Thames Center official plan also provides policy direction in allowing the addition of second units, including in agricultural areas, provided that they're capable of being appropriately serviced. Any regulation concerning second units in terms of limiting the size of the second unit so that it remains clearly secondary to the primary dwelling unit, as well as compliance with the Ontario Building Code, that will be necessary. Furthermore, Your Worship, following the policy direction under the Thames Center official plan, there's a set of criteria that needs to be satisfied to the satisfaction of council. And I've gone through that criteria as noted on my report. I'm satisfied that it has been met or it's capable of being met through the building permit process. So as such, I'm satisfied that this application is consistent with provincial policy and in conformity with the county and Thames Center official plans. During the circulation of the subject application, no issues were identified through the agency circulation process. And also, in terms of public comments, no responses have been received from the public as of the date of this report. So it's my recommendation, Your Worship, that this rezoning application be approved in principle and that staff be directed to prepare the necessary zoning bylaw amendment for council's consideration at the next regular meeting. That is my submission, Your Worship. I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bancroft. Now, do we have the agent available?
Yes, Your Worship. The agent, Caitlin Crowley, wasn't able to attend, so we have Casey Kulchicki from Zelinka Priamo here on her
Okay.
behalf.
Great.
Good evening or good afternoon, Madam Mayor and councilors. My name is Casey Kulchicki. I'm a senior planner with the Lincoln Preamo Limited. I am representing Trevor McKenzie, the owner applicant on this application. At this point, I just want to thank staff, particularly Mark, for that presentation. We've had the chance to review the staff report, and we are in agreement with its recommendation for approval tonight. I'm happy to address any questions that councilors may have with regards to this application. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Casey. Any members from the public in attendance who have questions?
No, your worship.
Okay, so any council members have any comments or questions regarding this application? Seeing and hearing none, then I'm going to ask that the public meeting portion of this application has been completed. And then I'm going to ask council to make their decision on the application by resolution, considering all comments received, and there is a recommendation attached to this. So Deputy Mayor Elliott moves, seconder. Councillor Heeman, all in favor? So moved. Thank you, Mr. Kolchak, for joining us in a short notice, I guess.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, now moving on to 6.2, the zoning amendment application, Z22. Craig William Arts, Caitlin Patricia Maria Spicer, Kenneth Tisti Arts, the applicant being Delta Power Equipment Limited as the agent, and the address being 7061 Cobble Hills Road. And I'm going to ask our planning director to provide an overview of the application and planning recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is an application to rezone a portion of the subject lands containing a cluster of existing buildings and structures from a site-specific agricultural A52 zone to a site-specific agricultural AGC zone to allow a farm equipment and service establishment, which is otherwise not permitted. And also the balance of the lands would be rezoned to an agricultural zone. Just for background, the subject property, it's a 62-acre farm located on the west side of Cobble Hills Road and south of Highway 7. The lands are used primarily for farming purposes for field crop production. However, the southeast corner of the site along the frontage of the property, there are two buildings. Each with a floor area of approximately 2,000 square meters and 560 square meters. These lands are serviced by a well and a septic system. And historically, this property, with regards to those buildings, it was used to accommodate an agricultural research facility. And however, over time, the main vacant building was retrofitted to allow for indoor cannabis cultivation, subject to a zone change that was granted back in 2019. That cannabis cultivation use has ceased, and as since the buildings are currently vacant. So Delta Power Equipment is a business dealing with the sale and service of farm equipment, and they're currently located on a 19th line just south of the Highway 7 roundabout. And Delta is proposing to move their business from their current location to make use of existing buildings, along with a new building to be constructed on the subject land. So a rezoning is required considering the current zoning doesn't allow for farm equipment sales and service. And hence a site-specific AGC zone is being requested to rezone a portion of the property, that southeast corner of the lands, having an area of about 3 hectares in size, to permit the proposed use, whereas the balance of the farm is to be rezoned to an agricultural zone. So currently the property is designated agricultural, and it's zoned agricultural A-2, which allows for all of the uses under the parent ag zone, along with a commercial greenhouse. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, and under the provincial policy statement, this is a prime agricultural area. where the subject lands are situated, which is an area where prime agricultural lands are predominant. And in prime ag areas, permitted uses and activities under the provincial policy statement include agricultural uses, agricultural related uses, and on-farm on-farm diversified uses. So to assist in determining whether the proposed use, the farm equipment sales and service, is an ag use under the, ag related use under the PPS, the province has released a guideline document entitled Guidelines on Permitted Uses in Ontario's Prime Ag Areas. And through that document, they have a set of criteria which must be met for a use to qualify as an agriculture-related use. And that criteria includes being farm-related, commercial, and industrial use, shall be compatible with and shall not hinder surrounding agricultural operations. It's directly related to farm operations in the area, supports agriculture, provides direct products and or services to farm operations as a primary activity, and it benefits from being in close proximity to farm operations. So in all, I've reviewed this proposal, Your Worship, in great detail. And after reviewing the policy framework, I'm satisfied that the proposed use meets that criteria. Also, under the Thames Centre official plan, we have got criteria that must be met in regards to a rezoning application. I've gone through that criteria as noted in my report, and I'm satisfied that the criteria has been met or it's capable of being met. In particular, we currently have site plan approval in place for the former use of the property, and likely an amendment is going to be required to that site plan agreement to allow the additional building to be constructed on the land. Adverse impacts, Your Worship, on neighboring uses are not anticipated, recognizing that the closest neighboring dwelling is about 190 meters away from the main building. In regards to the balance of the farm, it should be rezoned to a site-specific agricultural zone to recognize area and frontage deficiencies of 21 hectares and 137 meters respectively, compared to the required standards of 40 hectares minimum and a minimum of 150 meters frontage. And given that those changes are technical in nature, no further notice should be required. So in all, I am satisfied, Your Worship, that this proposal is consistent with provincial policy, as well as our official plan, and constitutes sound land use planning. In the agency circulation of the application, Your Worship, no issues were identified. And that would also include comments that were received after the preparation of my report from the Ministry of Transportation, where they have indicated no issues. From comments from the public, we did receive a written submission, which is included with the council agenda from a neighboring property owner to the northeast, Ms. Dingman, where she had indicated some concerns about the nature of the proposed use, including potential impacts related to noise, traffic, and exterior lighting. At the same time, Your Worship, I forwarded those concerns from Ms. Dingman to Delta for their review, and they did actually provide a response to those concerns in writing. And I just want to bring up a couple of points to summarize the fact that we're dealing with normal business hours associated with this use, basically 9 to 5. And the majority of the units that would be subject to repair would be conducted indoors, save and except for, larger equipment where there would be, spatial limitations. Also, as I pointed out earlier, this property will likely be subject to site plan control through a site plan agreement related to the proposed additional building. So in all, your worship, as noted in my report, it's my recommendation that this rezoning application be approved in principle, and that I be directed to forward the implementing bylaw for council's consideration once I've received a deposited reference plan to legally describe the lands affected, and that no further notice be required under the Planning Act. I'm here to answer any questions, your worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bancroft. The agent, are they present, Sarah?
Yes, we have Mark Macco.
Okay.
Hi, Mark, we see you, but you're still muted. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Is that better?
Perfect.
Okay. Okay.
Yep, Mr. Macco, did you have any additional information you'd like to provide?
Yes, thank you for hearing me. Yeah, I'd just like to say that on behalf of Delta, I don't believe that in the scope of the business that's going forward, much will change or impact the local surroundings as in the neighbors type thing. Delta Power is upstanding in as far as property curb appeal goes, and we really stand and we pride ourselves in having curb appeal and looking good, and we live in the communities that we service. And I understand that Mary Ann Dingelman had some concerns, but I believe that we answered those concerns. So hopefully she feels good about that, which I believe that say we answered those properly. Other than that, most of the noise, if there is any noise, will be indoors, as mentioned by Mark earlier. Two answers to that is, one, it makes more sense to service indoors to provide a better service for our customers. So it just goes hand in hand. So noise pollution would be reduced significantly. Okay, and business hours, as noted, is generally between 9 and 4:30 type thing for trucks coming and going. And that's not every day by no means, leaving the premises. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Is there any members from the public in attendance?
Yes, Your Worship, we have Ben Vernoy.
Okay.
Hi, Ben, are you able to unmute yourself?
Got it. Can you hear me now?
Perfect, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr.
Yeah.
Vernoy. Yeah, do you have some comments?
Nope, not really. I'm just kind of a spectator. I don't know how I got in here, but yeah, I was just watching to see if there was any concerns. And to me, everything looks like it's going well.
Well, that's great to hear. And thanks for joining us, even if it was by accident. Any council members have any comments or questions? No, seeing none. So I'm going to advise that the public meeting portion of this application has been completed. I'm going to ask council to make their decision on the application by resolution, considering all comments received. And there is a recommendation attached, council. So moved by Councillor Hunter, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? Well, it sounds like we're going to have a new business moving in, so that sounds great. Very good.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Good. So moving now on to public meeting for a zoning application Z522. And the purpose of this public meeting is to consider a zoning bylaw amendment as submitted by Patrick and Emily Donnelly. The property location is 21055 Fairview Road. So again, I'll ask Mr. Bancroft to provide an overview and a planning recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is an application for rezoning to permit the continued occupancy of an existing dwelling for up to 3 years while a new dwelling is being constructed. The subject property, it's just under 3 acres in size. It's located on the west side of Fairview Road and south of Whiten Drive. This property contains a single detached dwelling along with 2 accessory buildings. And these lands are designated agricultural and they're zoned A-48. So the applicant is proposing to construct a new dwelling while retaining the existing single detached dwelling on a temporary basis. And within 3 years of the new dwelling being constructed, the applicants intend to remove the existing single detached dwelling. I've connected my analysis, Your Worship, as outlined in my report, and the Thames Center official plan provides policy direction and allowing temporary uses for up to 3 years, including the construction of a second dwelling while retaining the existing dwelling. There's criteria also under the official plan and dealing with those situations. And I'm satisfied that the criteria has been met, especially since the applicant has entered into an agreement with the municipality, which would require removal of the existing dwelling no later than 6 months after final completion and occupancy of the new dwelling or expiry of the temporary use bylaw, whichever occurs first. There's also a requirement for a $5,000 security deposit, which will be due at the time of the issuance of the building permit. So in all, I'm satisfied that this proposal would be consistent with provincial policy and in conformity with the Thames Center official plan. In terms of agency comments, there were no concerns identified in the agency circulation of the application. And the same holds true with the public consultation to surrounding property owners. No responses have been received to date. So it's my recommendation, Your Worship, that this rezoning application be approved and subject to a maximum of 3 years. So that concludes my presentation. If there's any questions, I'm here to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bancroft. Is the applicant here to provide any additional information?
Yes, we have Patrick and Emily Donnelly.
Okay.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. We have no further information to provide, and thank you.
Well, that's great. Then I'm going to ask if any members from the public are in attendance who have questions.
No, Your Worship.
Okay. Any council members have any comments or questions? Nope, seeing none. I'm going to advise that the public meeting portion for this application has been completed. I'm going to ask council to make their decision on the application by resolution, considering all the comments received, and there is a recommendation attached. So Councillor Heeman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott, all in favor? So carried. Now moving on to the public meeting for official plan amendment 0122. And the purpose of this public meeting is to consider an official plan amendment as submitted by 2819842 Ontario Incorporated Pentar Recreation, care of Jason Whiting. The agent being Monteith Brown Planning Consultants, care of Dan Smith. And the property location is 136 and 156 Cromarty Drive. I'll ask our planning director to provide an overview of applications and planning recommendations.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the purpose of this amendment is to amend the Thames Center official plan by redesignating certain lands from the recreational designation to a recreational special policy area designation to provide policy direction to recognize an existing dwelling and also to allow the severance of a lot containing that dwelling, which is otherwise not permitted. And for background, the subject property, it's located on the north side of Cromarty Drive and east of Westchester Bourne and backing onto Highway 401. This property has an area of approximately 25 acres, and it contains a single detached dwelling along with a recreational vehicle or RV campground known as Campers Corner, originally established under the KOA banner back in the 1960s. This campground features approximately 100 RV sites, campsites, 18 tent campsites, 2 cabins, and some related campground amenities. There's also a small portion of the property which is used for agricultural purposes for the cultivation of field crops. Also, from a servicing standpoint, the subject lands are serviced by on-site potable water supply and private sanitary sewage disposal system for the residents and the campground, and in that they are both serviced separately. Also, access is also provided by means of separate driveway entrances on Cromarty Drive for the residential and the campground use. So also the subject lands, they're designated recreational under the Thames Center official plan and zoned site-specific commercial recreation CR-5. So although the RV campground is permitted through existing zoning, the single detached dwelling is not listed as a permitted use. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, and under section 7.20 of the official plan, it includes evaluation criteria for official plan amendments, which would include, for example, the provincial policy statements, also conformity with the county official plan. There's a need for the proposed use, compatibility of the proposed use with existing uses, assurances that we have proper servicing in place, the physical suitability of the land for the proposed use. And so in all, recognizing that the campground is designated and zoned for a non-ag use and has been used for this purpose since the 1960s, and given that this application does not propose any new physical development, there's no policies that would prevent the approval of this proposal, in my opinion, Your Worship. So in all, I'm satisfied that that evaluation criteria, as noted in my report, has been satisfied. Sorry?
Thought you were done, but go ahead.
So should this official plan amendment be adopted by Thames Center Council and subsequently approved by Middlesex County Council, we can anticipate that a consent application will be filed along with a corresponding rezoning application. In terms of agency circulation comments, Your Worship, there were no issues identified in the circulation of the application. We also got comments from MTO after the preparation of my report, and they also have no concerns. In terms of public comments received, no responses have been received to date. So it's my recommendation, Your Worship, that this application for an official plan amendment be approved in principle, and that staff be directed to forward an official plan amendment for consideration of adoption at the next regular meeting. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt you there. I forgot there was lots more to come.
No problem.
Is the agent here for any additional information, Sarah?
Yes, Your Worship, we have agents Dan Smith and Eric Steele, as well as the applicant Jason Whiting.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep, coming in loud and clear.
Okay, great. Never know with this lack of high-speed internet out here. Thank you for having us present tonight. I'm joined by the owner, Mr. Jason Whiting, and also from our firm, Mr. Eric Steele, who will have carriage of this file shortly. But I'm here to present tonight, and I thank Mr. Bancroft for his planning report comments on our application. As he indicated, this is an official plan amendment for a special policy area in the Thames Center official plan. As far as amendments to the plan goes, these are not overly common, but they do exist in certain circumstances where the situation is such that there's been long-standing uses that really aren't changing. It's merely an attempt to sever the dwelling from the balance of the campground. The dwelling itself serves no purpose for the long-term use of the campground moving forward. And we're satisfied that the prevailing planning policies are capable of being satisfied. Just one note for the file. We had indicated that the name Pentar Recreation, it's actually Pentor Recreation. My apologies for that error. Moving forward, as Mr. Bancroft indicated, our client will be proceeding with filing the necessary applications for consent and a zoning bylaw amendment to recognize the residential use. We do wish to keep the proposed lot line for the dwelling inside the mature tree line that already exists there to keep the treed area with the campground itself. And there will be separate entrances and separate services provided for each use. The owner is aware that a survey will be required, of course, of the property, and will ensure that that's provided in due course. So thanks again for considering our application, and that's my comments. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Are there any members from the public in attendance who have questions?
No, Your Worship.
Okay, any council members have any comments or questions? Councillor Patterson?
Yes, Mayor Work. I'm just trying to understand the property with the residential house that's on it. What they want to make that recreational special policy area? I don't understand that. Why wouldn't it just be residential?
Okay, I'm going to let Mr. Bancroft answer that question.
Through your worship, the intent behind this official plan amendment, like from a redesignation standpoint, is simply to have that dwelling severed out. We can't simply apply a residential designation because that's the type of designation that applies to residential areas and settlement areas. So you can consider this one to be a bit of a one-off. A special policy area is required sort of as an exception to the rule. But at the end of the day, should the amendment be adopted, it would permit the residential use so that we can have zoning in place after the fact, which reflects the residential use and in effect permits the residential use. So Councillor Patterson, I hope that answers your question. You know, that's the reason why the change in designation has to occur as such. Thank you.
Okay, any follow-up, Councillor Patterson? Okay, any other questions, council? All right, seeing none, I'm going to advise that the public meeting portion for this application has been completed. I'm going to ask council to make their decision on the application by resolution, considering all comments received, and there is a recommendation attached. So Councillor Hunter moved, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? So carried. And I think just before we move on, I believe our CEO has a comment.
Thank you, Your Worship. Dan, I hope you're still there. It looks like you are. Am I asking a fair question that this may be your last file?
Is he still there?
I think he left after his last file.
At least in Thames Center.
Okay, well, Dan, listen, I noticed your retirement. I'm telling the group now, if they haven't heard, that Dan is retiring as of the end of May. And I certainly will miss you on the golf course, at least in a work function. I'll join your force on any day, sir. You show me up every time. And I certainly speak for Mr. Bancroft and previous administration in Thames Center that you'll be missed, and good luck with hanging out that gone fishing sign.
Thank you very much. You caught me completely by surprise there.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Good luck on your retirement, Dan.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to 6.5. So that's consent agenda B122 and zoning application Z122. The purpose of this public meeting is to consider applications for consent and zoning bylaw amendment as submitted by Pat and Jane Elliott. The property location being 21300 Heritage Road. And now I'm going to ask Mr. Bancroft to provide an overview of the application and planning recommendations.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the purpose of the consent application would be to facilitate the disposal of a dwelling surplus to a farming operation as a result of a farm consolidation. And the purpose of the rezoning application would be to rezone the balance of the farm to prohibit any new residential use consistent with provincial policy. For background, the subject property, it's a 26-acre farm, and it's located on the east side of Heritage Road and north of Whiten Drive. It's used primarily for field crop production. However, the farm does contain a single detached dwelling and some accessory uses. The dwelling is serviced by a private well and a septic system. And the lands proposed to be conveyed would have an area of approximately 1 acre. And those lands would contain the single detached dwelling and the detached garage. The lands to be retained would have an area of about 25 acres. And the applicant is proposing to remove the existing in-ground pool and barn, as well as convert the pasture to cultivated land, which is all supposed to be tied in with the lands to be retained. So these lands are designated agricultural and protection area, and they're also zoned agricultural and environmental protection. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, as noted in my report, and the provincial policy statement, the county official plan, and the Thames Center official plan, they all generally permit lot creation in agricultural areas for a dwelling surplus to a farming operation as a result of farm consolidation, provided that criteria has been satisfied. And as noted in my report, I'm satisfied that the criteria has been generally met. Issues regarding the location of the septic system and the potable well, etc., those are capable of being addressed through conditions of consent. And as I indicated earlier, to prohibit any new residential use on the lands to be retained, a site-specific ag zone, A-45 zone is being requested. And the balance of the lands that are zoned environmental protection, EP, those would remain unchanged. So in all, I'm satisfied that the subject applications are consistent with provincial policy and in conformity with the county and the Thames Center official plans. In terms of agency comments received, no issues were identified. However, there's two matters that I wanted to bring to council's attention. From the drainage superintendent, he's indicated that drainage reassessments would be required. And also from building services, that the location of the septic system would need to be confirmed to confirm required setbacks. Both of those matters are capable of being addressed through conditions of consent, Your Worship. In terms of public comments, no comments have been received to date. So it's my recommendation, Your Worship, that the application for consent be approved, subject to the 9 conditions noted in my report, and also based on the reasons outlined in my report. And then lastly, that the rezoning application be approved in principle, and that staff be directed to bring forward the implementing bylaw for council's consideration once a deposited reference plan has been received. If there's any questions, Your Worship, I'm here to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bancroft. Sarah, is the applicant here to provide any additional information?
No, your worship.
Okay. Any members from the public in attendance?
No.
Okay. Council members, any comments or questions? Hearing, seeing none, I'm going to advise that the public meeting portion for this application has been completed. I'm going to ask council to make their decision on the application by resolution, considering all comments received. So we have 2 decisions. First, we're going to start with a consent B122. So looking for a mover. Councillor Heeman, seconded by Councillor Hunter. All in favor? Okay, so moved. Moving on now to the zoning recommendation, which is Z122, looking for a mover. Councillor Hunter, seconded by Councillor Patterson. All in favor? So carried. Now we have the public meeting consent application B222, with the applicant being John Stewart Vincent, the agent being Cram and Associates, care of Vicky Medeiros, and the property location is 4670 Marion Street. So I'm going to ask the planning director to provide an overview of applications, comments received, and planning recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the purpose of the consent application is to convey a parcel of land to facilitate the creation of a building lot to support residential development in the form of a single detached dwelling. The subject property, it's a corner lot, about 1.25 acres in size, and it is situated in Dorchester on the north side of Marion Street and on the east side of Ron Allen Drive. The property contains a single detached dwelling on partial services, that being connected to municipal water and serviced by a septic system. And the property also contains a swimming pool. The applicant is proposing to sever a vacant parcel having a frontage of approximately 100 feet along Ron Allen Drive and an area of approximately 0.4 acres to facilitate the creation of a residential building lot. The lands to be retained, they would contain the single detached dwelling and the swimming pool, and they would have a frontage of approximately 164 feet along Ron Allen Drive with an area of approximately 0.86 acres. These lands are designated residential under the official plan, and they're zoned residential first density R1. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, and there's policy direction offered by the provincial policy statement, county official plan, and the Thames Center official plan to encourage intensification in settlement areas, provided that the development is compatible with the surrounding area and represents an orderly and efficient use of land and infrastructure. So I'm satisfied that that policy direction has been met. There's more detailed policy direction offered through the official plan regarding severance criteria. And again, I'm satisfied that that criteria has been addressed or it's capable of being addressed through conditions of consent. Because of the proximity of the CN railway line, noise mitigation measures will be required, consistent with policy direction by the official plan. I'm satisfied that those mitigation measures can be addressed primarily by having the applicant enter into a development agreement to be registered on title as a condition of consent. And CN requirements are found in more detail in the agency section of my report. So in all, I'm satisfied, Your Worship, that this consent is consistent with provincial policy and in conformity with the Thames Centre official plan. In terms of agency comments received, there's no real issues that were identified in the circulation of the application, except there's a couple that should be mentioned. From building services, they've noted that the location of the septic system needs to be confirmed to ensure a setback of at least 3 meters to the new property line. That is capable of being addressed through a condition of consent. Also from the Director of Public Works, he is recommending that the 30-year-old service line be located and confirmed to be functional prior to the severance being finalized. And if the investigation results in a non-functional water service, the owner is going to be required to ensure that we've got proper water servicing in place for that lot to be severed. From CN Rail, they've indicated a recommendation for the implementation of conditions that should be met prior to approval being granted. And as noted in my report, they are requesting their standard warning clause be registered on title with all development agreements and offers of purchase and sale. Also an environmental easement for operational noise and vibration emissions in favor of CN. And they also specify, Your Worship, some certain mitigation measures to be addressed as through design elements. And in particular, the provision for air conditioning, allowing occupants to close windows during warmer months, also exterior cladding facing the railway, achieving a certain noise rating, as well as acoustical upgraded windows facing the railway. And also, as I mentioned before, those matters are certainly capable of being addressed through conditions of consent. In terms of public comments, no responses have been provided by the public. And so it's my recommendation, Your Worship, that this consent application be approved, subject to the 11 conditions that are noted in my report, and also subject to the reasons outlined in my report. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, is the agent here to provide any additional information?
Yes, we have the agent Vicky Medeiros and the applicant Jack Vincent.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay, we can hear you loud and clear.
Hi, good evening, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Vicky Medeiros and I am agent on behalf of the applicant, Mr. John Stuart Vincent. I do apologize. We're undergoing some construction in my building, so if it's a little bit loud, that's why. I want to thank Mr. Bancroft for that presentation. So the land that's to be severed are vacant. They are historically lotted within those dimensions. We will be seeking a minor variance as well with respect to this. And essentially we are just looking to have them severed in accordance with the historical lotted measurements. So that's everything from me.
Okay, thank you. Any members from the public in attendance, Sarah?
Yes, Your Worship, we have Shelley Gellner.
Okay.
Good evening.
Evening, Shelley.
Hi.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. I live next door to that property. Just need to know, sorry, in regards to septic tank issues, because that lot is smaller than required. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to bring it up at the separation or at the variance.
I'll just check with Mr. Bancroft. Is this for this one or for the next application?
So through you, your worship, I can confirm that there is another application regarding a minor variance request, which will be dealt with, considered by council subsequent to this consent proposal. They are, however, interrelated. So to appease the concern from Ms. Gellner, I should point out that as recommended, there is a condition of consent that would require the applicant to retain a qualified professional to undertake a soils investigation to confirm that the dimensions of the lot to be severed, to confirm the adequacy of those dimensions relative to not only soil conditions in the area, but also, the placement of existing wells in the general vicinity of the subject lands. Those all need to be taken into account to determine whether or not these lands are adequate to support a private sewage disposal system. At the same time, your worship, the lot that is to be severed, it is generally consistent with the lotting that is found in the area. So it certainly wouldn't be, any smaller compared to the lots in the area. I will just leave it at that in case there's any further questions. Thank you.
Okay. Shelley, does that help you with your question?
Yes, but I also have something. I just have a concern that if there's any water or anything that could contain to our property, just want to make sure that that's covered within the 11 steps.
And I'm just going to confirm with Mr. Bancroft that that would be within the 11 steps.
Yeah, within the 11 steps, your worship, there would be a requirement for a development agreement. So through that process, we would need to ensure that the grading and the drainage is adequately demonstrated through a plan to be prepared by a qualified professional. So thank you.
Shelley, any other questions?
Not at this time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any council members have any comments or questions? Oh, sorry. Council. What? There's one more person? Sorry, Councillor Patterson. There apparently is one more person.
Your worship, we have Nick Bozick coming in.
Okay. Nate, was it? Nick. Oh, I can't hear tonight.
Hello.
Hi, Nick. Whenever you're ready, you can start.
I just wanted to see the meeting. I didn't want to have input.
It's always nice to have you drop in though, Nick.
My concerns are the same as the
As Shelley's?
I just don't want anything affecting my water.
Yep, totally understandable.
Yeah, because I'm actually downhill up there.
Even more understandable. Okay, any other questions, Nick?
That is all.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else, Sarah?
No, that's it, your worship.
Okay, council members, any comments or questions? Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Work. In our official plan, it says that we need minimum lot area of 2,000 square meters. What's the purpose of, why is it 2,000?
Okay, Mr. Bancroft, do you have the answer for that question?
Through your worship, that is the standard that is offered through the zoning bylaw. And in dealing with zoning standards, you know, for the most part, they are arbitrary in nature. But at the end of the day, as long as there is the necessary analysis demonstrated, certainly reductions in lot area can be considered. If that answers your question, if not, let me know. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson, do you have another question?
Yes, Mayor Works. So say we approve this 1,533 square meters and they get a qualified person to say that it's okay for the septic system. And what happens when it actually comes true that it doesn't support that? What recourse does the neighbors have?
Through your worship, we've got conditions of consent noted, and should they be approved, should they cannot be satisfied, I should say, then the consent would ultimately fail. So if that qualified professional is not able to demonstrate adequacy of the site to accommodate private servicing, then the consent would fail, and the consent would effectively lapse. So that in itself would protect, you know, the neighboring public interest in the area.
Any other questions? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, one last question. The CN recommendations or their comments, I guess, those aren't required. Like the planner's not making those part of the recommendation. Is that correct?
Aged.
Do you want to comment on that, Director
Yes,
Bancroft?
Yes, through you, your worship. Under condition 4, which deals with the applicant being required to enter into a development agreement, it is specified that noise mitigation requirements are to be implemented. At the same time, your worship, most of CN's comments are fair and appropriate, but we also have to understand the fact that this is a boilerplate response that they have provided. Where I'm going with this is the last bullet in my report, the last line on the page 4 of my report. They're asking for a noise barrier and fencing for outdoor play areas. That in itself would not be appropriate, considering it's not as if this development backs onto or sides onto the railway line. So it would be my recommendation that we would basically implement these requirements, save and except for that one. Because of the you know, the noise associated with the railway line, we owe it to whoever buys this property to make sure that we've got the necessary measures in place, which would implement you know, council's direction through the official plan in terms of having proper noise mitigation in place.
Okay. Councillor Patterson?
Yeah, I don't understand, like CN's asking provision for air conditioning. So are they asking our council to tell somebody they have to have air conditioning? That doesn't make sense to me.
Mr. Bancroft?
Yeah, your worship, these are standard procedures, comments that CN is requesting. And this is no different than in dealing with other development examples in proximity to the railway line. You know, this is no different than development that has occurred in proximity, not only for Dorchester, but also in Thorndale, you know, such as the Foxborough subdivision, for example. These same mitigation measures applied there, and they should apply in this location as well, your worship.
Yeah, it's definitely not the first time that we've seen CN make those recommendations. And any other questions? Okay. So I'm going to advise that the public meeting portion of this application has been completed, and I'm going to ask council to make their decision on the application by resolution, considering all comments received. There is a recommendation, council. So looking for a mover. Deputy Mayor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Hunter. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, so noted and carried. Now I'm going to ask for a resolution to adjourn the public meeting in order to sit as a committee of adjustment under the Planning Act. Councillor Heeman, seconded by Councillor Hunter. All in favor? So moved. Okay, now we have a public hearing for a minor variance application, A222. I'm advised that the purpose of this hearing is to consider an application for minor variance as submitted by the applicant, John Stewart Vincent, the agent being Cram and Associates, care of Vicky Medeiros, their property location being 4670 Marion Street. And Mr. Bancroft, do you want to give us an overview of this application?
Most certainly, Your Worship. Thank you. So with this variance, we're dealing with the lot to be severed of the previous consent application. And through this variance, the applicant is seeking relief from the minimum lot area requirement for the proposed building lot. So of course, this is the building lot proposed over on Rhode Island Drive. The R1 zone requires a minimum lot area of 2,000 square meters for a partially serviced lot, so on municipal water and on a private septic system. Whereas the lot to be severed is proposed to have a lot area of just over 1,500 square meters. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, as outlined in my report. So in all, we need to be satisfied that the 4 tests under the Planning Act have been met in dealing with the evaluation of minor variances. And as indicated in my report, I'm satisfied that those tests have been met. In terms of agency comments received, it is the same comments that were mentioned in regards to the consent application. And also, as it applies to public comments, no responses have been received as of the date of the preparation of my report. So it's my recommendation, Your Worship, that the application for minor variance be approved, subject to the reasons outlined in my report. Thank you.
Thank you. So is Ms. Medeiros still present with us? Okay.
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay. Vicky, are there any additional information you want to provide?
Hi, good evening, Your Worship. No, I don't have anything further to provide. In the last application, I had mentioned that it's consistent with the other lots that have been the historical lotting that was done, and it is consistent with other lots adjacent to it as well. So that's the reason why we have the lot area of 1,500 square meters.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah, are there any members from the public in attendance who wish to provide the comment?
Yes, Your Worship. I'm just going to bring back Shelley Gellner one more time to ensure there's no additional comments.
Hello again.
Hi, Shelley. Any other questions?
Yeah, I do have a question. With 1,500 square meters and the septic tank takes 200 square meters, that brings it down. So for living capacity and septic, there's not an issue with that?
Just 1 second. This was regards to the application prior?
Correct.
Yep, okay. Okay, Shelley, I'm just getting some advice from the clerk. The meeting prior where we discussed that, that's the only place that we can actually discuss that particular question. So if you have any other comments, just contact the planner.
That's why I asked the first question in the first statement, if it regarded to that, or if I had to address it in the second.
Yeah, and I think he actually gave you the answer in the first one.
Not in regards to square footage and the square footage of a septic tank.
Okay, and I think that's what that recommendation 4 was concerning. So if you want specific answers to that, I would contact the planner because that is part of those conditions. So those conditions have to be met. And that's part of that recommendation number 4. Does that make sense to you?
Not really, but continue.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of the public?
Yes, your worship, we have Nick Bozick.
Okay, and
Hello?
yep, go ahead, Nick.
So what you're trying to do is basically make Shelley be quiet, and this is just a formality. Because she asked a very specific question, if she should bring it up now or at the minor variance portion of it. And you guys beat it around the bush and you just pushed it through. So do you guys just want to push through every little minor variance that comes across the table?
Nick, this is a public hearing for the minor variance. The questions that Shelley asked were in the other one, and I'm sorry if there's a misunderstanding, but all of those things are in the first one. You can contact the planner. And again, like he mentioned, if something fails to meet a standard that's been looked at by a qualified professional engineer, that means that it's not going to go forward, that's when that will be addressed.
She specifically asked when to bring it up.
Yeah, and we specifically told her the answer in the first application. And I'm just going to ask the planner, do you have any other comments regarding what was just said?
No, your worship, I have nothing further to add, considering, like you pointed out, the question really had to do with the consent proposal, and the consent proposal has been approved by council subject to conditions. So, and absolutely, if there's any questions from members of the public, they can certainly contact me and I can speak with them directly.
So Shelley and Nick, it's not that we're trying to do anything differently than what you think's happening. It's just that your question there was basically answered under those recommendations that the planner provided. And they're very, very thorough and they're very demanding. And if there's any concerns, that's where those will be answered. Okay.
Will we be notified of this?
What I think you should do, Shelley, is contact the clerk tomorrow and make sure, so then you'll be notified of anything that goes through with that.
But I want it publicly documented.
Well, I think by saying this on the air right now, it is. And I think the clerk is there to take any information and provide any information she can to you.
Your
Thanks,
worship, can I jump in for a second?
Absolutely, Mr. Bancroft.
Thank you. So for any members of the public who wish to be notified, I would suggest you email the clerk's office and make that request to be notified in writing. Thank you.
Hey, Shelley, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you heard Mr. Bancroft?
I did.
Okay, good. All right. So, Sarah, any other members of the public?
My worship.
Okay. All right. So now, committee members, any questions regarding the application? And Councillor Patterson.
Just so, I mean, been some confusion here. So just so I understand, the last application under consent was to sever the lands. And this minor variance has to deal with the size of that land. Is that correct?
I'm going to let Mr. Bancroft, I think it's frontage, but I'm going to let him answer that.
So for you, your worship, the variance application deals with relief from the zoning standard relative to lot area. The consent application dealt with a request to create a parcel of land that has a deficient lot area compared to the standard found in the zoning bylaw. So the variance seeks relief from that standard in the bylaw for a lot that is smaller than is otherwise required. So, thank you.
Counselor Patterson, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that helps us understand it.
Okay, any
Between the
follow-up?
two.
Okay.
Yeah, between the two, yeah.
Okay, great. All right, any other committee members have any questions? Hearing and seeing none, we do have an application, or we have a resolution provided, so I'm going to ask the committee to make their decision. Okay, Deputy Mayor Elliott moved, seconded, Councillor Hunter, all in favor? Opposed? So noted and carried. Now we have a public hearing for a minor variance application A122. The purpose of this hearing is to consider an application for minor variance as submitted by the applicant, Melissa Capello, the agent being Frank Capello, and the property location is 3129 Catherine Street. And I will ask the planning director to provide an overview of the application.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the applicants are seeking relief from the zoning bylaw to facilitate the construction of an accessory building in the form of a storage shed. The subject property, it's over 1.5 acres in size. It's a residential lot located on the south side of Catherine Street and west of Shaw Road. This property contains a single detached dwelling that's serviced by a private well and a septic system, an in-ground pool, and 2 accessory buildings. These lands are designated rural residential under the official plan, and they're also zoned for the same purpose. So the applicant is proposing to construct a storage shed with a height of 5.8 meters, which exceeds the maximum height requirement of 5 meters, measured to the peak of the roof. Upon further review, it was determined that 2 existing smaller accessory buildings totaling 261 square feet, so that be in the form of an existing shed and a pool house, they were not taken into account by the applicant in the filing of this minor variance application. So the total allowable floor area for accessory buildings under existing zoning is 1614 square feet, whereas the proposed storage shed would have a floor area of 1,600 square feet. And the smaller existing accessory buildings, combined with the proposed building, would exceed the maximum floor area requirement with a total of 1,862 square feet. So the applicant has amended their variance application accordingly to recognize those existing smaller accessory buildings, considering they wish to retain those. They have no plans to demolish or remove those existing smaller accessory buildings. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, as outlined in my report, and I'm satisfied that the 4 tests under the Planning Act have been met. In terms of agency comments, no issues were identified by agencies in the circulation of this application. In terms of public comment, we do have a letter of concern from the adjacent property owner to the east. And I believe that submission is attached to the council agenda. Basically, there's some concerns expressed by Ms. Kwarciak in regards to her view being obstructed and possibly shade with her established vegetable and fruit garden, and that it may affect any future resale value of her property. And she's got other concerns about the need for a proper survey, and that there may be a requirement for involvement by the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, given the fact that this property backs onto the Thames River. Certainly, there could be the need for a permit by the Conservation Authority because it is a regulated area, which is applicable law under the building code. So more than likely, that will be a prerequisite to obtaining a building permit. So as noted in my report, Your Worship, I am recommending approval of the application as amended, and that no further notice be required as a result of the amended applications. And also that the application be approved subject to the reasons that are outlined in my report. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Sarah, is the agent here for the meeting?
Yes, Your Worship, we have Melissa Capello.
Okay.
Me?
Melissa, are you there?
Hi, I'm here with my husband, Frank.
Okay, great. Well, we can hear you. So whenever you're ready, if you have any additional information you want to discuss, now's the time.
I just want to thank your worship and council and Mr. Bancroft. Geez, I feel like our request is of the minor variance for the height is not really unreasonable. And we already hired AGM to do a property line survey of our property, which is happening on April 28th, coming up. And just following the proper bylaws is what we're doing. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Any members of the public in attendance who wish to provide comments, Sarah?
No, Your Worship.
Okay. Committee members, any questions regarding this application? Seeing none, there is a resolution, so I'm going to ask committee to make their decision on the application. Looking for a mover? Deputy Mayor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Heeman. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, so moved, and thank you for everyone involved with that. Now we're moving on to public hearing for minor variance application A322. And the purpose of this hearing is to consider an application for a minor variance as submitted by 410303 Ontario Limited, the property location being 20627 Fairview Road. I'm going to ask our planning director to provide an overview of the application.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is an application for minor variance to seek relief from the zoning bylaw as it relates to the exterior side yard setback requirement to facilitate the installation of a truck scale related to a grain handling facility. The subject property, it is a 50-acre farm located on the west side of Fairview Road and north of Evelyn Drive. It's accessible from both Fairview and Evelyn, and the property contains a single detached dwelling along with several farm buildings and grain bins, silos, etc., associated with the grain handling facility. These lands are zoned and designated for farming purposes, and the applicant is proposing to locate a scale 15 meters from the exterior side yard lot line related to Evelyn Drive, whereas the zoning bylaw requires a setback of at least 25 meters. The applicant has also advised that the new scale wouldn't impact the number or size of trucks that come in and out of the property. And the current location of the existing truck scales is problematic from a traffic flow standpoint. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, and I'm satisfied that the 4 tests under the Planning Act have been met. In terms of agency comments received, no issues were identified in the circulation of the application as noted in my report. And also, as noted in my report, no responses have been received from the public in response to the circulation of the application. So it's my recommendation, Your Worship, that the minor variance be approved as submitted based on the reasons outlined in my report. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Heeman, did you have a comment?
Yes, just that I have to declare a conflict of interest, although it doesn't name the applicant. I believe we conduct business with the owners.
Okay, great. Thank you.
In indirect pecuniary interest.
Okay, all right. So noted. And going to ask the applicant, are they available to provide any information?
Yes, Your Worship, we have Doug Duffin. Hi, Doug. We see you, but your mic is off. Are you able to unmute yourself?
I have nothing further to add. I believe Mr. Bancroft answered anything unless there's any questions.
Okay, I think that that pretty well says it all. Thank you, Doug. Sarah, any members from the public in attendance who wish to provide comment?
No, Your Worship.
Okay, any committee members have any questions regarding this application? Councillor Patterson?
Yes, Mayor Work, what constitute a minor variance? Because he's asking, or this applicant is asking for 10 meters, which is quite a large amount. Like, how does the planner decide what's minor and what's not?
Well, I don't know if there's a major variance, so I think we'll have to find out from the planner the exact terms.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So although numerically, I don't disagree in that this is a reduction of 10 meters to the required standard. It begs the question whether or not there's any unacceptable adverse impacts on neighboring lands, or there's a concern in dealing with public safety, et cetera, in dealing with this particular application. So in all, as noted in my report, I'm satisfied that there's no issues. And that's particularly important considering the fact that this site is in close proximity. Well, I shouldn't say in close proximity. It is basically at the intersection of two roads, both Fairview and Evelyn. And in all, staff is satisfied that the site visibility triangle requirement has been met, in that there's no obstruction within that required site triangle, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Councillor Patterson? Okay, all right. So going to ask the committee to make their decision on the application by resolution. Looking for a mover. Councillor Hunter, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? Okay, so moved. And now I'm going to ask for a resolution for the Committee of Adjustment to adjourn and council reconvene its regular meeting in order to continue with its deliberations. Looking for a mover. Deputy Mayor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Hunter. All in favor? All right, so moved. So now we're moving on to the consent agenda. Items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and may require discussion, but no action on the part of council. Consent items are received for information in one motion. Council members may request that one or more item be removed for further action. So we have 8.1 regular council minutes, 8.2 Middlesex County Official Plan Amendment, Notice of Public Open House, and 8.3 Upper Thames River Conservation Authority 2022 approved budget. Any of those need to be pulled out? Councillor Patterson?
I just have a question regarding the Upper Thames budget.
Yeah.
Can I ask that now?
Sure.
Yeah. So well, it's not even a question. I'm just raising a concern that the deficit from their 2022 approved budget is $834,435. So, I mean, that's a big concern.
Sure, it's for concern for them too. So any other questions? Okay. All right, looking for a mover. Councillor Heeman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? So moved. Now we're looking at 9.1 with a PDS 1522, the application for draft plan of condominium 269994, Ontario Incorporated, 133 Donnybrook Drive. And is this a report that somebody's addressing? Okay. Who be that person? Okay, whenever you're ready, Mark.
Thank you. So what you have before is report number PDS-015-22. And the purpose of this report, it provides an evaluation of the application to facilitate the development of a vacant land plan of condominium for industrial purposes. Council will recall that this was presented at a public meeting of municipal council back on January 31 of this year. So this report includes a summary of the public and agency comments received, along with a recommendation for council's consideration. So this property, it's on the south side of Donnybrook Drive, east of Westchester Bourne, having an area of just under 15 acres. These lands are designated and zoned for rural industrial purposes. And in terms of the proposal itself, it's a vacant land plan of condo for industrial purposes, a total of 6 lots or units to support industrial development. Lot sizes range anywhere from, well, for the most part, they are 1 acre and 3/4, with the exception of the southerly lot, which is more like 3 3/4 acres in size. These lands would be accessible by a private road with a cul-de-sac off of Donnybrook Drive, being a shared common element feature of the condominium. Servicing in the form of individual wells and septic systems, they would be provided on an individual lot or unit basis, considering that there's no municipal services in the area. In terms of the agency comments, those are all noted in my report. There's nothing significant that stands out in that these agency comments have been addressed, or they are have been addressed through conditions of draft plan of condominium that is, those conditions are appended to my report. In terms of public comments, no comments from the public were received. So as noted in the analysis section of my report, Your Worship, I'm satisfied of the appropriateness of this form of development. It would be consistent with the vision that is offered by the official plan and having the lands developed for rural industrial purposes. And as I indicated also, there's recommended draft plan conditions that would be implemented through a development agreement with the applicant. And those conditions are appended to my report. And also the units or individual lots, they would conform with the minimum lot frontage and minimum lot area requirements under existing zoning. So it is my recommendation that Thames Center recommends the issuance of draft plan of condo approval, and subject to the conditions that are attached to my report. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Bancroft? Councillor Patterson.
Yes, Mayor Work. Normally when we do new development, it's always on full services, which is sewers and water, or at the very least, just water. Why are we not asking this developer to bring water to their location?
Okay, Mr. Bancroft.
Through you, Your Worship, it would not be feasible, Your Worship, to extend services, considering, at the closest point, we're talking municipal water being available at Boardwalk Way and Dorchester Road. So I guess that's the first point. The second point is through the official plan, which is council's vision for growth and development, these lands, along with other lands located on the south side of Donnybrook, and east of Westchester Bourne. They're designated for rural industrial purposes. And with the wording rural, it basically denotes that private servicing is expected and appropriate, in that the type of industry that is to locate in these areas it's to be dry in nature, in that we're not talking about heavy water users by any means, those types of industrial uses that would otherwise require large volumes of water for processing. So what we're talking about here in terms of dry industry would be uses such as, contractors' yards, truck terminals, warehousing, that type of thing. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, Councillor Patterson?
And then on the subject of water, with these industrial properties, what do we do about fire suppression when we don't have water close to those places?
Yeah, I think in the report, we see the recommendations for fire suppression, but maybe Mr. Bancroft can comment on that.
Yes, that's precisely your worship. As noted in my report through the comments that were provided by the chief building official, he's noted that each site will need to be provided with water for firefighting by way of water supply tanks or ponds, with a design for each according to NFPA 24 and the OBC standards. So I think that answers Councillor Patterson's question. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, Council? All right, so Councillor Heeman?
Yeah, just a comment. I think Councillor Patterson raises an interesting point about having water servicing for industrial areas, specifically because we amended our fee structure. So I think that, this might be something of interest to see what the possibility for development in the future is. But I think in this situation, the proposal is completely applicable.
In speaking from experience, I know that we have had industries look at those areas, but recognize that the servicing for water has to be minimal. As Mr. Bancroft said, it basically it needs a minimal water requirement to meet approval here. This can't be a factory with a huge commitment for water, because that just wouldn't be feasible there. So I think that is part of it. Now, I don't know, Mr. Bancroft, if you want to comment on that or not, whether I've gotten that right or not, but I thought I had. Good, the thumbs up, so I did understand it. Good, okay, so we do have a recommendation in front of us. Any other comments before I call the vote? Okay, looking for a mover. Deputy Mayor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Patterson. And all in favor? So moved. No unfinished business is my understanding, which actually means finished business, but notice of motion, seeing none. New business, seeing none. Moving on to bylaws. So we have bylaw 7/2021. Looking for a third and final reading. Councillor Hunter, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? Okay, and then we have bylaws 2020. I'm going to make sure I do this right. 2021 to 2022 be adopted as presented, and looking for a mover. Councillor Heeman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? So moved. And then we have our next meeting is Monday, April 4th at 1 p.m. And now we're looking for adjournment. So looking, Deputy Mayor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Heeman, all in favor. So we are now adjourned at 6:42 p.m. Thank you.